Hello everybody. In today's video I would like to continue our previous discussion about different brands, models with respect to the reliability, parts availability of each model and sub model or series. So we'll basically be discussing a Nikon brand and some of the cameras that we service here. We have 5 different models on the list. I've got FG, I've got another EM, FM, FM10, and alongside those cameras, we'll just discuss different possible issues as it pertains to each of the models. So we'll start with, as you can see here, Nikon FG. So this is a pretty good camera, in my opinion. It's pretty reliable. I mean, it's a fairly old camera. Let's say about 40 years old at this point, maybe a little bit less. And I have an example of it here. So what problems can you expect with this particular model? So one of the biggest concerns we get from our customers as it pertains to this specific model, FG, or actually FG20 as well, and that's the light leak. Okay. That problem is actually, in my opinion, inherent to pretty much most of the Nikon models, FM, EM, FGs, FEs. I think the reason being is because they used very thin layer of light seals or light traps, whatever you want to call them, and when they deteriorate, as you can see here from this example, there's very little left. Even the deteriorated seal is pretty much completely gone. So, you know, had it been a little bit thicker cushion, let's say like on a Minolta or a Canon, okay, where it's a dual side, where there's a seal on this side and on the door, it wouldn't be that apparent. But with Nikons, they used a different material, still degradable, but thinner, and pretty much every camera that we get also suffers from light leak. So expect that unless the seals have been replaced previously, that could be a problem, light leak. Okay, also, if you can see here, the cushion is also designed with a very thin layer of material, and there's very little left here. And as you can see, as I'm bouncing this window here, that could create a bouncing effect, and that mirror could cause the problem in some of the photographs, higher speed, shutter speed photographs. So that would be problem number 1, okay, which is easily rectifiable if we go ahead and replace those seals. Problem number 2 that I noticed with this model is the following. So this is an electronically controlled camera, meaning except for the B and M90, all other speeds are controlled by power. Okay, so what has to happen once you have the batteries in the camera, okay, you start advancing the camera, and you can see right now it's not really fully functional, but it's a good example for you to visualize it. The film counter must reach 1 to be able for the shutter speeds to work and for the light meter to be operational. So keep that in mind in most of the Nikon cameras, including this example of FG and FG20. The film counter must reach the count of 1. So what we get a lot of times from customers is the following complaint: that, listen, the film counter in fact reached the desired count of 1 and above. However, the shutter speeds are not sounding right, are not accurate, or sounding like it's 1/1000th of the second every time. Okay, and when we test the camera, it is absolutely correct. So the shutter speeds are not right, and the light meter is actually not working. So what could contribute to that? The problem, in my experience, is that around the film counter there's a contact surface, a metal attached contact surface that once the film counter reaches a 1 and above, it touches a reset, a secondary contact that engages or provides power to the board from the battery. And sometimes, and I would say, I mean, it's when I say sometimes, it's relative. It's getting more and more prominent now. This contact that sits around the film counter detaches itself, and it just sits there loose, or just basically it's just non-existent. Okay, which means that that contact that is supposed to get in touch with the metal surface of the film counter never does, and hence the camera never gets power. In this case, what happens is that the camera just releases with a battery. The camera knows there's a battery, but it doesn't follow any shutter speeds, and it doesn't show you any light meter readings. So what has to happen is that we'll have to basically remove the film counter, properly reattach and clean that metal surface contact and put it in place. So that way, when it reaches the desired count of 1 and above, it makes the contact, okay, with that surface, and it starts operating properly. So it is becoming a more common problem as these cameras age. So keep an eye out on that issue. That could be it. If somebody is selling the camera and tells you that, listen, you know, if the film counter reaches 1, it still doesn't work, that could be the problem. Or it's something that you might want to ask before you buy the camera. All right, what else? Another thing that is very prominent with these cameras, most Nikon cameras, is the shutter mechanism is using this horizontal shutter blades, metal shutter blades, and a lot of times they get pushed in. Okay, once they get pushed in, this is actually not a bad example because it uses a slightly different design of shutter blades than, let's say, EMs or you know, FM10s or FMs or EMs. Once that happens, it's very difficult to reposition them correctly in the right slots. Okay, and sometimes I've seen customers try to do it themselves, and they botch those shutter blades even more. And again, these are in many cases made out of two materials, either aluminum or titanium blades, and you, in my opinion, you cannot perfectly straighten them out. So if you have a replacement blade, you can replace it. If not, at best what you can hope for is that it will be placed in the correct slot and it'll work, but it will look crooked. It'll do the job, but it'll look crooked. So that's another thing you can look for if you're buying or plan on purchasing this particular model, FG, FG20, or pretty much any Nikon. Check to see what condition the shutter blades are in, because it's very important. And also it could cause light leak if the shutter blades have been realigned, but they are bent. It could cause the light leak into the film compartment. So, you know, keep that in mind as well. All right, so what else can we talk about this? Another thing that I want to quickly touch base on with this particular model is that you may encounter that the light meter works absolutely fine. It gives you the right reading, accurate reading, shutter speeds work absolutely fine, but the light meter seems to be jumpy. This problem is pretty inherent with most Nikon series, including the FG. Not as much as some other cameras we'll talk about shortly, but FG also suffers with this problem every once in a while. And that could be related primarily to this ASA dial. This ASA dial underneath has the copper contacts. They could get oxidated, corroded, dirty, what have you. And the readings may be accurate, but not, you know, constant enough. The contact is not permanent, so that light meter might be a little bit jumpy. Okay, it uses you know, LED bulbs inside, and it could just basically flicker, randomly flicker. So fairly easy solution is removing this assembly here, removing the contact, cleaning it, with a eraser, proper eraser, and then cleaning the surface with alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and putting it back. That should, in most cases, resolve the problem unless it's something more in depth. So aside from that, it's not a very common problem with it, but it could happen. So look out for that. And besides that, I think it's one of the most reliable, currently one of the most reliable Nikon cameras you can buy of this category. Okay, entry level Nikon. I'm not talking about like F2s, F3s that are higher level, higher grade cameras. But this would be on my list of the most reliable cameras. The shutter is pretty good. Okay, rarely have any issues with it. If anything, it could be more electronic than mechanical. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and put this camera aside and talk about a different camera. Let's see here, what do we have? Let's talk about, say, Nikon EM. What problems do we have? So this is a fairly simple camera, not a lot of options on it, pretty much auto, M90 as you can see, and B, bulb. Okay, and in my opinion, this is probably the most reliable Nikon camera you can buy for your money. Okay, shutter, just go ahead and remove this old film here. Shutter is actually really good. Okay, it uses again, it doesn't work here in my particular case, but nevertheless, shutter uses again horizontal blades similar to the FG model. Okay, same concept, and in my opinion, very reliable. Never had to replace the shutter ever, neither here nor on the FG or FG20. And it's also designed slightly differently. So even if you accidentally push your finger through it, it's so sturdy that it's really not that easy to do. So when you remove the film from the chamber and accidentally push it in, the chances are you will not go through like you may on, let's say, FM or FE or FM10. Slightly different design, more robust, I would say. So what issues can we expect with this particular model? Okay, so this camera comes with, I'd say, about 2 or 3 issues you can look out for. Issue number 1 is a lot of time I don't like the way this particular rewind knob is designed. The material that they're using is plastic here, unlike on the FM and EMs, FM, FEs, or FGs, which is metal. Okay, then this plastic rewind knob basically cracks, breaks, and gets damaged pretty easily, and you'll see a lot of times that there's going to be a crack here, and it uses a slightly different design, not just material wise, but the design of the actual knob comparatively to other ones. So it's not easy to go ahead and just swap it from one to the other. So you're probably going to have to look for the EM replacement, specific replacement for the EM, because it uses a slightly, as you can see, it's a larger rewind knob. A slot might be a little bit different too. There's an extra washer too. It's not a big deal. Again, it's not something that you can probably replace it with a different looking knob. Okay, that may look out of place. It'll still do the job, but again, this is something to look out for. Okay, it's more of an external physical damage than operational issue. Now, another problem that you can expect from this camera due to the age more than anything else is jumpy a light meter needle. Okay, now that could happen in my experience to about at least 50% of these EMs. It uses a slightly different design of the light meter guiding aperture system and the ASA. Okay, and it definitely gets oxidated. There's actually a layer of dirt and oxidation, corrosion, whatever you call it, that sits on the contact that prevents the sensor from capturing the value correctly. So that definitely needs to be changed, cleaned rather than changed, only if it's damaged, because it sits on a ceramic surface. So basically what we'll have to do is remove the top cover, remove this ASA module, then there's going to be a ceramic surface plate. We'll have to take it apart and clean it on the bottom and on the top, completely clean it with a proper eraser. And another thing we'll have to clean too is the aperture sensor as well. Have to remove this lens mount, carefully take out this aperture lever here, aperture ring, and do the same thing because the material is quite literally the same as on the ASA dial, on and around ASA dial. So that would be problem number 2 that you may encounter, and that's more of an actual issue, okay? Because if the light meter is jumpy, you can't really tell the reading consistently, okay? And it's actually going to be basically jumping. As you depress the release button, you'll see that that would pretty much occur as I'm describing. Again, this camera also is dependent upon reaching the film counter reaching a value of 1. Okay, until it does that, your camera is basically just firing empty, so to speak, blanks. So you want to make sure it reaches that value as well. And there's another issue similar to what we've discussed previously on the FG series. There's actually a different kind of contact here, not a surface contact around the film counter, but rather film counter has a little notch or a lever that suppresses, literally, if you see my tweezers here. So once this film counter reaches 1, it's supposed to close 2 contacts, and by closing those 2 contacts, you'll be pretty much engaging this camera, light meter, power, auto, whatever, everything. And a lot of times these copper contacts get dirty, get bent as well. So the lever does its job and it suppresses those contacts. But because of the copper, I mean, it doesn't quite catch the other contact and it stays open. Okay, it's due to the fatigue level of the contact or some other issues, but the contact needs to be either cleaned, repositioned, realigned, or put in a place where it can be closed when the film counter reaches 1 and above. Okay, so that's becoming a common issue because, again, this this material wears out over time, and the copper contacts wear out too, get fatigued, and they either have to be replaced, repaired, or cleaned. So if somebody tells you, listen, I get power, I can get, you see right now, I am getting power. If I push the button, I see the red LED here, but none of my auto features work and the light meter doesn't respond. Chances are that this is the problem. It's a fairly simple issue, okay, but it's something that needs to be addressed, and if that's not fixed, this camera is pretty much useless. Because there's really no manual speeds. It does it on B and M90. Okay, so you can't really use it until you fix it if you want to use it on auto. All right. So what else we can talk about this camera? Just like with the other camera we discussed, it suffers from severe light leak. So Nikon uses the same, again, very thin layer of seals around the body here. And as you can see here, very thin layer of film door light seal that is also degraded. So again, there's nothing on this side except for degradation from the film door. But if they even had something here, chances are the light wouldn't, even with the deterioration of the existing seal, the light wouldn't penetrate as bad as it does in this particular case. So again, light seals are definitely a problem that need to be addressed too, like with pretty much every other Nikon camera. All right, so besides that, I would say that this is a pretty reliable camera. Okay, and if you can address, even preemptively, can address cleaning of this contact and cleaning of the ASA as well as the aperture contact, you pretty much are guaranteed to have a really good camera. Never had to replace shutter, as I said before. The main circuit board is really reliable, very simple, not much, no thrills. Main board, very durable, and that's about it with this camera. So if you get a good example of the Nikon EM, and it's been overhauled, serviced, it will last you a while if you don't you know, mishandle it. All right, so this would be our part 1 of this discussion, and I will see you in part 2 shortly. And in part 2 we will discuss the remaining cameras on our list. Basically gonna be FM, FE, and the FM10. And I will see you soon. Thank you for watching.